We are back on Kind of Sound with my very good friend Dean Rees-Evans. Dean, how you doing?
Pretty good. What about you, Giles?
Yeah, I'm all right, man. I'm all right. So, what can I say? I'm Kind of Sound is on a roll. We are rocking through some fantastic interviews, and I've been meaning to get you on the show for some time. So it's great to have you along. Now, those of you listening won't be able to see the fantastic shirts that myself and Dean are wearing, but you can always go over to the Kind of Sound YouTube and check that one out. So, Dean, it's summer. It's early August. Tell us, tell us about life recently, because first of all, just maybe introduce yourself and what you do to the Kind of Sounders.
Okay, well, Dean Rees-Evans, born in 1962. Um, I lived in Australia for about 12 years, just came back just over a year ago now. And it really feels like I've landed in the right place at the right time with the right people. So it's been a really fantastic re-entry back into Europe again after living 12 years in what now call the desert. Because in many from many perspectives, it was pretty much like living in a desert, even though we weren't living in a desert. Emotionally, I think, and psychologically and community-wise, things are so very different in Europe, in Britain, and in Europe generally. The way we interact, the way we spend time with each other is quite different. So what do I do? Well, besides being a high school teacher, which I absolutely love, I love being with the kids. I love that energy. A lot of my friends say, I don't know how you can do it, like working with teenagers. 30 kids 5 times a day, most days. But no, I love it. And the other work that I do is helping people to find their way home to psychological well-being because there's a lot of paths to get there, but I try and show people the shortest path to get to understanding. Sure, there might be other stuff that people still need to do physically or emotionally, but in terms of finding out who we are really are, returning to who we really are is really my main goal. So when I'm working with kids, it's the same. I just want them to feel safe. I want them to feel at home and I want them to feel loved. And isn't that what everyone in the world wants?
Yeah, it certainly is, mate. And let's just send out some prayers, like myself, Dean, and everyone listening. Let's just send out some prayers that everyone can feel safe and feel at home and feel loved in this sometimes troubled world.
Yeah.
So beautiful, Dean. Keep going, man. Keep going.
So the kinds of work I've been doing over the last 21 years. So I up until 21 years ago, 2004, April, in fact, 2004, I was a practicing Buddhist. So I'm still part of what they call the Western Buddhist order. I haven't
Yes.
resigned from the order because the vows that I took as a practicing Buddhist, I still live by those principles today. To do no harm and to serve humanity, to help humanity move towards enlightenment before me. Just get behind people and help them on their way. So I feel that's pretty much what I do with my work and my life generally. So the kinds of things I do, like I said, I work as a high school teacher, but also in my private work, again, I do work with individual kids sometimes, but I've done work in hospitals, I've done staff training in schools, I've worked in small companies as well. And I usually call that program End to Burnout, because in so many fields nowadays, especially teaching, people are burning out because they're expected to do so much. And I think it's kind of part of living in the modern world. We're all expected to do so much. And, people are busy all the time. And I'm not sure that's really all that good for us, continuously having stuff to do and be busy. So, yeah, I think it's important for people to find time to relax and to do the things that's one of the things I always encourage clients to do is find out the things you really love to do and start spending some of your time doing those things because that's what really brings joy back to us. And let's face it, who couldn't do with a little bit more joy in their lives?
You're 100%, and that joy is not going to run out. It's not like oil, Is actually there is an unlimited supply of it within us and all around us. Kind of sounds. I'm just going to give you the website here that I've come through to, threeprinciples.co.uk. And Dina, what was the other one that's linked to that?
It's threeprinciplestraining.com because I also offer training rather than just doing the one-to-one stuff. I also do trainings, like I said, in small companies or hospitals or schools, anywhere really, anywhere people are. And what's interesting is it usually takes somebody within an organization say, that's what I want for my staff. And then, you find an inroad. Otherwise, it's sometimes quite difficult to really explain what it is I offer as a training because it's insight-based training, which is the complete opposite to information-based training. Obviously, with insight-based training, I'm expecting and hoping that the audience are going to gain personal insight for themselves about who they really are as individuals. And then the rest is a walk in the park, because if they start seeing that, then they break free from the conditioned thinking they've been living with most of their lives and start living a more fulfilling life and probably start relaxing a lot more as well, which again is what everyone really needs.
Dean, I remember we had one of the wellbeing retreat days at the kind of sock. In actual fact, just got off the phone to Hugh. He sends his love,
Hmm.
and you gave a fantastic talk. It was a fantastic presentation, and there was a way that you delivered the information. There was a way that you brought the audience to their own insights, to their own awakening, which was a really beautiful style. It was very, it was beautiful watching you. It was beautiful watching the audience. It was beautiful feeling that awakening take place, and it's quite it's quite an interesting thing, isn't it? Like the three principles. I remember doing some work with Catherine Kennard and her dad Peter
Yeah.
Anderson, right?
Yeah.
And I did some work with it, and to some filming for them, and they're working with the children and all this stuff. And and then afterwards, I said to Julia, I said, "Well, what are these three principles?" And she goes, "I've got no idea." She said, "I've heard them talk for hours, and I've got no idea what it is." So, so Dino, a kind of sounder has just landed on Earth from
Yeah.
Mars, and like, what are the three principles?
Okay. Well, it's pretty simple. The first thing I'd say is that to remember that when I'm talking about, or any facilitator is talking about the three principles, all they really are is a pointing. Like most spiritual traditions, it's just a pointing in one direction, and they're all pointing in the same direction towards who we really are. So when I describe them, keep that in mind, that that's what I'm pointing towards. It's not a new way of thinking. It's not a new form of psychology. It's not a new religious path. It's not a new religion. It's just literally three principles represents a metaphor that points towards who we really are as individuals and how the universe is actually working. It's all it really is doing, is pointing towards how we operate and how the universe is operating. Of course, we're just another part of the universe operating within the universe. So let's keep it simple. So by mind, we don't mean the brain. And that is where we sort of part company with quite a few forms of psychology, because often modern thinking is that the brain is synonymous with the mind. But the brain is a physical organ, just like our heart and our stomach, colon, spleen. It's just another organ. Sure, it's a rather useful organ. If without it, I don't know how life would be. But in terms of mind, we're talking about the universal intelligence of all things. So some people might call that God. It doesn't really matter what people call it, but it's just the power and the intelligence behind everything. And if we think about something as simple as we take a little seed, and if we put it in the earth, as long as there's moisture, as long as there's nutrients, and as long as there's sunlight, something will grow from that seed. Now, biology would just say, well, that's photosynthesis. That's how things grow. But what's behind photosynthesis is universal intelligence. How does the seed know to do those things, even with the right ingredients? It can't just be something biological. It's got to be something bigger than that. So That's what we mean by mind. We're pointing towards the universal intelligence of all things. And let's face it, mind is in all places and is everywhere. It's not certainly not just here. Um, we are part of mind. So that's where we're pointing when we're talking about mind. Consciousness is another one. Consciousness really, and I should say this now, is that the three principles are really just one thing. It'll all make sense. So by consciousness, we're talking about, again, the consciousness of all things, the universal consciousness of all things. Now, how do we know that there is universal consciousness? Well, number one, we're plugged into it. And if there was no universal consciousness, we wouldn't be conscious beings. So if you think about it like this, when we are in nature and we're watching a beautiful sunset or looking at a seascape, we don't analyze that, do we? We don't look at it and start trying to work out the colors and thinking about it logically. We just luxuriate in that feeling. And understanding that our consciousness is pure from the beginning is a real help to most people. I mean, for me, it was mind-blowing to really see that at a deep level. Like I said, I went from being a practicing Buddhist for 14 years, and almost overnight, within 2 days of training with my mentor, Dr. Roger Mills, who sadly died in 2010, my whole life changed so much that I knew that this is what I'd be doing for the rest of my life, sharing this as much as possible with as many people who had ears to hear and eyes to see it. So that's consciousness, universal consciousness of all things. And thought's a really interesting one, because we're talking about them as principles. That's why they're called the three principles. And we're not talking about thinking. I mean, we don't know how we think, but we all know that we think, don't we? Everyone knows that we think. And most of the thinking that goes on in our mind is largely superfluous. It's just thoughts arising in our mind constantly. And some of them are repeat. Some of them are on repeat. And that's where we fall down the path of anxiety and depression and all those other negative states of mind that people can get caught in temporarily. But what we're talking about here is the power that lies behind our thinking, not thinking itself, the power that gives us the ability to actually think. It's incredible when you start thinking about it, that we have this capacity to continuously generate new thought the whole time. Now, one interesting thing about thought is that we can't actually stop what's arising in our mind, because it's happening like a moving body of water. It's just continuously being generated. But what we can do when we start seeing the power that lies behind our thinking, that power of thought, is that we start having the ability to recognize that the state of mind we're in is coming from our own thinking. And that is the key to setting people free psychologically. Because if you see that it's your thinking that's creating the reality that you're experiencing, then you stop looking outside yourself and at the world and at other people for a reason why you feel the way you do. It's like we can't be, as individuals, we cannot be victims of our circumstances. Sometimes they might be dire. We know that we look at the world and we can see a lot of people in very dire circumstances. But essentially, we can only be victims of our thinking about those circumstances. And that's why there are people, excuse me, that's my alarm to remind me to be on this meeting. I'm here. So that can really set a person free to see that. So, I do have certainly one friend I know of, and I think I've told you this story before, who lives in Kiev in Ukraine. And she was here as a refugee for a couple of years with her young daughter. And she said once she was lying, and this gives us an idea of the state of mind that people can be in, rather than the assumption we make about people in war zones and other such extreme circumstances. She said, once, Dean, I was lying under the bed. It was an air raid, and we couldn't make it to the shelter. So we just got under the bed. I got under there with my young daughter, and I thought, if we die, everything's going to be okay. She had no fear at all. Her mind was free enough to see that even though they're not ideal circumstances, that our heart was open enough to accept, well, if we die, we die, and it'll be okay anyway. Like St. Julian of Norwich always said, all will be well.
Yeah. It's a beautiful message, isn't it, really? And you know, um, it reminds me of the band Mobius Loop. They've got this song, and it goes, "Dance, dance, dance while you can. We're all gonna die, so dance while you can." It's
Absolutely.
like, seize the day,
Yeah,
seize the
definitely.
day, and we have been given, as you were saying there, Dean, this incredible life, incredible opportunities, incredible capacity for thought and creativity. And yeah, life sometimes can be tough,
Yeah,
but brother, sister, hold on. That's all I would say to you, kind of sounders. If life for you right now is tough, if you're listening to this show and you're thinking, yeah, you know, I need some guidance on psychological well-being, well, you go to threeprinciples.co.uk and Dean's beautiful website. I just want to read this quote here by Sydney Banks. The secret to happiness is not to go out there and try to find it, because happiness is not out there. Happiness is within the consciousness of every human being. So, Dean, who was Sydney Banks? That's on your website there. Who was Sydney?
Mr. Sidney Banks was the first person that started speaking about the three principles in the way that we speak about them today. So he was an ordinary guy. He was a an immigrant that moved to Canada when he was quite young. He got married. He had several children, and he said, like most people married with kids, they had their normal ups and downs, and they went to see this bigwig psychologist on the mainland. So I lived on this tiny little island called Salt Spring Island. He was a welder, so he was working in this big factory while they were manufacturing stuff. And all his friends kept saying, "Look, you really should go. You really should go." So eventually they did. They went, and he said, "Dean, it was absolutely horrendous." He said, basically, this this guy got them couples to shout and curse and swear at each other to try and get it all out.
Yeah,
And he said, his wife turned to him and said, "Look, Sid, we could have stayed at home and done this for free.
yeah,
What are we doing here?
yeah.
Doing
Classic.
this? It's madness."
Sounds like a Friday night in my house, Dean.
Well, what he found was, so they said, "Look, let's just get out of here. Let's go home. This is a waste of time. We've wasted our money." And they were having coffee with this other couple. He said there was a lot of psychologists there, big wigs from all over America and Canada. And he said that they got chatting to this other couple, and he started telling this guy how insecure he was as a man. And this psychologist said, "Yeah, I'm the same as you. I'm really insecure." But he said something to him, which Sid said he realized the psychologist didn't really know what he was saying, but he really heard it. And he said something like, "Sid, you said you were insecure." He said, "You do realize something like it's just your thinking. You're not really insecure." And he said something clicked in his mind, and they went home, and he said, "I didn't sleep for 3 days and 3 nights." He said the nights went by like they were just like nothing. It just disappeared. He just got up in the morning and carried on. And on the third day, he said they'd gone to visit his mother-in-law, which he didn't always get on with anyway. But he was there with his mother-in-law, and his mother-in-law and his wife were in the kitchen. And he heard them talking. And he realized that sometimes when we talk, that it's obviously just meaningless babble. And he suddenly heard beyond their words, and he started to laugh. Well, this got him in trouble, of course. So his mother-in-law came through and wanted to know, "What are you laughing at?" And then his wife came through and he thought, "Oh no, now I'm really in trouble. What am I going to do? How do I get out of this one? How do I explain this?" So he said, "I turned to look out of the picture window to try and think of something to say to them to make them feel better." And he said, something really strange happened. He said, "I suddenly was like I was looking down a tunnel of light." And he said, no one else could see it. It was just me. It was suddenly I was looking down this tunnel of light. And he said it may have been 3 seconds long. And suddenly something just completely shifted in his head. And he saw the truth of the three principles. And he said, he turned to his wife and his mother and he said, I'm home, I'm free, I've conquered this world. He said, this means to say, you and I, to his wife, are going to travel the world and we're going to change psychiatry and psychology forever. And his mother-in-law and his wife just looked at him like, he's flipped. He's gone crazy. He's gone absolutely nuts. So he said, and he could see how scared they looked. So he started talking about ordinary things like welding, and then they really thought he'd lost the plot.
So
But
when
from
was that, Dean? What roughly,
that,
what sort of
that was
year?
in 1973.
73, right.
1973, yeah.
Yeah. So then
And
he
he
went on a
said,
mission just spreading the word.
well, basically, he said he didn't really know what to do with this experience. He thought it was very simple, but he didn't know what to do with it. So he just went back to work for another 10 months. And then one day he thought, oh, I've got to leave. So he just went to the boss and he said, I'd like to hand you, a month's notice. And they said, oh, come on, Sid, you've got all this seniority here. He said, no, I've got to go. And he said, well, have you got any savings? And he said, no. He said, well, how are you going to, you've got kids and a wife, how are you going to provide them? He said, I don't know, but I have to leave. So his manager tried to convince him, but he was adamant. So he left and he said he didn't know what he was going to do. Now, this is the really strange thing about when these things happen to us as individuals. Remember, 1973 to 74, there's no internet. The internet didn't come around till 96. So the way people communicate was very different in those days. And yet, people started coming to visit him from all over the world. How did they know? And he just sat and talked to them, and people seemed to get better. So the way I came across this was an American psychologist, my mentor called Dr. Roger Mills. He was asking a new question about in psychology. He was asking, how do we define mental health? Because most of psychology and most of psychiatry is just looking at pathology. It's looking at, well, what's wrong with people and how can we fix those problems? So he was asking this new question, how do we define mental health? And he had so much funding because it was a new question. He said he had state funding, he had central government funding, federal funding. And he said, I was running 36 research projects at once because I had so much money to spend. And he said, I heard about this guy in Salt Spring Island who was just sitting down and talking to people and they were getting better. So he thought, well, got a bit of money, let's go and have a look. So he took his dog and his daughter and off they went. And he never looked back. His whole practice changed after that.
Wow.
So,
Amazing stuff.
yeah,
Amazing stuff. So, Dean, we're on KindaSound. And I
yes,
just want to talk about one of the things that you said there about the Buddhist philosophy, about
yeah.
not harming others and how that kind of fits in you know, with your own lifestyle and your own sort of dedication to veganism. So, like, how do if someone comes along and says to you, well, Dean, why are you a vegan? Um, what's your answer?
It's a good question. I would always say, well, when I was a kid, I was a non-meat eater. I didn't like meat, I didn't like fish. And then the horror really hit me when I realized exactly what it was. I remember one day, distinctly remember looking at my plate and seeing, I've always had really prominent veins in my hands, so, and it's really easy to take blood from me because they're so prominent. And one day I'm looking at this piece of meat, I think it was lamb, and I'm looking at my own veins and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is like cannibalism. I'm eating a living, once was a living being. This can't be right.
Yeah.
We don't eat each other, so why would we eat animals? So that sort of really put the last nail in the coffin for me in terms of meat, and that was it. I became a complete non-meat eater, and eventually I became a vegetarian for a few years. I remember when I first came home, when my parents, stepmother and my father, are both gone now, but and they went to their grave without knowing this, but they thought that I was eating what they were putting on my plate until I told them, no, that's it, I'm going vegetarian. But we had the world's best fed dogs. He used to come and sit next to me at dinner time, and all my meat would just go straight into his mouth.
Yeah, yeah. And
So
that is the thing, in it, because some creatures do eat meat.
Yeah,
and the dog has got teeth to,
yeah,
tear it, and it's got a very different digestive tract, and it's got different levels of stomach acid. I mean, anatomically, like it's got claws and all this, like the lion, and it's a
yeah.
cat and all these things. They're a bit different than us, aren't they?
They
Really,
are.
and I think that it's a very interesting kind of stage of life that we're at, really. I think with the whole journey of veganism,
Yeah,
because in the UK we probably hit peak vegan about I don't know if it was 5 years ago or 6 years ago or something. It was really up there, and then the COVID came along, and people thought, well, this is going to put people even more into veganism. The studies showed that people who are following a plant based diet, were more resistant to viruses, they were healthier, and all of these things. Um, but it's an interesting time, Dean, because where I stand right now, I think that the peak vegan when it was here, and now we seem to be moving into a different space where some people who were vegan are now eating meat again, saying that they're a lot healthier because of it. There's certain physical problems that they had, and that they've no longer got them. And this is what I say to these people. And obviously, I'm not telling anyone what to do. It's up to them. But this is my message, right? It's how are we going to feed the world? Because that's something I'm very much concerned about. Making
yeah,
sure that everyone has got enough food. And I'm just going to explain this for the kind of sounders. I know you know this, Dean, but if we have a big field and we have a cow on it, and the cow eats the grass, and we kill the cow and we eat the beef, you can effectively feed one person for the size of that field, right? But if you grow, I don't know, like beans or whatever, things on it, you probably feed 10 people. You can feed 10 times the amount of people. But if you grow with permaculture principles, with veganic practices, with electroculture, my God, we can upscale that to feed so many more people
yeah,
with all the nutrients that we need. And that means that one field that we've got, that precious land that we've got, we can actually feed the world rather than the 2 billion starving people in the world, which I
yeah.
say no more. I say let's feed the world. So, obviously people have got their personal choices and they've got to find their own way, absolutely. But sometimes we've got to think beyond our own self and look at, well, what about the people in the world that need the food? Because, if the population's growing, fine. The climate's changing, fine. Well, we want to feed people. What's your thoughts on that, Dean?
Well, I'm completely with you, Giles, because I think that all of like you said, permaculture and electroculture and veganic gardening are essential for our future, really. If we, like when I'm at school and kids are being taught about climate change and global warming, I often say to the kids, is anybody actually suggesting to you what the solution is?
Mm.
And of course they don't. They're just teaching them about, well, this is happening. This is a concern. This is what we've got to understand this. But they're not looking at solutions. I often say, well, for most of my life, mostly because of a woman that I didn't know her, but she had these little stickers that said, if we grow trees that grow fruit and nuts, we can actually reduce, at the beginning when we were first talking about global warming in the sort of late 70s and
Mm.
early 80s, she said, if we just do that, and I say to the kids, why don't we just plant millions of trees like they're doing in China and in India? Why don't we just do that? Because if there's really a carbon problem, there's a solution that's really cheap and easy to do. And we could make most of those trees because nature always wants to create a forest anyway. So if we just
Mm.
assist it, then we can have an abundance of food, fruit and nuts that can assist a healthy diet for everyone. And as you say, using those principles of veganic gardening, permaculture, and electroculture, which ancient cultures have been doing for centuries anyway, if not thousands of years, producing an enormous amount of food and medicine right in the land around them. Yes, that's the solution. That's the
Yeah.
solution to to all of our ills as well. You
Yeah, I
know,
think it's one of those things, isn't it, that does tie in so much with people's well-being. You know, that connection with the soil
yeah,
and with our food again. And we've been out foraging, just opposite. We've been out foraging the blackberries,
nice.
and we had a session on it. And then little Zachary said to his mum, can I make an ice lolly? Can I make ice lollies with these?" So she showed him how to do it. Anyway, the next day we're working. Unbeknownst to us, the little lad's just sent himself up the lane. He's picked his own blackberries. He's squashed them through the sieve. He's put a little bit of maple syrup with it, sweeten them up a bit. A little bit of all you need, maybe. He's whacked them in the freezer. He's eating the ice lollies. And it's like, I'm using a metaphor here, people. Oh, this is a metaphor, but give a man a fish, and but teach a man a fish. So teach a kid to pick blackberries, or plant apple trees, or grow potatoes, or, you know, green beans, or, hazelnuts, or chestnuts, or walnuts, or, hemp, or right, whatever we can grow, these amazing things. And it's exciting, isn't it, Dean? I think the future is a bright place, and the future is a brighter place, my friend, because of people like you in it. You're a wonderful man doing wonderful work, and it's a wonderful thing as well that you've gone back to teaching, because I know how highly the children, the other staff members, and also the people employing you think of the work that you're doing. So that's absolutely fantastic. So I'm just going to give you the website again. That's the threeprinciples.co.uk. That will take you through the Dean's beautiful site. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, yeah, I could do with a bit of support, I could do with a bit of mentoring, I could maybe like to read a fantastic book, which Dean's written a couple, and I know another one's on the way. Do get in contact with Dean. He will really be able to help you in your life. He helps me, he helps my family a lot by his wonderful shining presence. He wears lovely shirts, by the way. Dean, I'm just going to let you wrap this one up, my friend. Just final words from you.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd say thanks for giving me this opportunity to join you on Kind of Sound. I know that the whole family behind Kind of Sound, the kind of the charity, kind of charity, is just such a big concern and looking in the right direction to help the world. And yeah, I'm right behind the whole thing because I think we've reached a stage now where we have to help each other, and I think that after spending time with you and your lovely family over the last year, I realize that community is probably, on top of everything else we've said, community is probably one of the most health giving activities we can engage in, to be together, to hang out, to sing, to dance, to play, and to just be in each other and share good food and just, yeah, and share our ideas. I think that is one of the things that our modern society has, and COVID added to this in a way, pulling us away from each other when we really, at a time when we really need to be together. We need to be together and hold hands and share what we have with each other and stop being suspicious of each other. Just embrace the beauty and the love that's available to everyone. I just want everyone to experience some of that because it's pretty phenomenal stuff.
Absolutely, absolutely. It just came into my head there, kind of sound as Vibe Fest. Okay, if you go to kindofsock.org, then you'll find the details of the Vibe Fest. If you want to get together in a community endeavour, that's going to be at the start of September, as well as many other things that myself and Dean are going to be involved in as we move into the golden age, Gino.
Yes.
Yes, indeed. Well, I'd like to thank my wonderful guest, Dean Rees-Evans, for his time today. Kind of sound as I've got to get ready because we're shooting off. Another quick plug here to the Shine celebration. That's shineseminars.org. That's on over the Lions Gate of the 8th of August, 7th to the 10th, the event is. So hope to see you there. And keep it kind of sound, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you soon.